Hello everybody, this is your chance to see my little baby Mia. Hey Mia, you good girl? It's Mia and it's Jasper, they're both here. Mia, you good? No, she is angry. This is her favorite toy. This is Mia's favorite toy. She plays with it for hours and it never gets old. Flipping these balls around. Hey Tuna. Where'd Jasper go? I swear. Jasper. Jasper. There he is. He loves his tunnel. This is his tunnel. They've got 2 cat fountains. They're so spoiled. Aren't you? This is Jasper, not Snickers. He's a little kitten. Yes, he's about a year old, year and a half old. Yeah, probably a year and a half. Yep. You good boy? He crawls up on my leg when I need to give him food, when he wants me to give him food. This is all of their toys. This is their little backpack to take them to the vet in. And these are their, not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 cat condos. They're so spoiled. Where's that Mia? Let me see if I can. Mia, you good girl? Hey Mia. Yeah, look at that. She's a Mia. Look at him. He's looking out the window. They live in the good life. Yesterday, he decided he would try to climb the trim around the window. He climbed up to about here and he got his nail caught in the curtain. It's a very dire circumstance. Fortunately, my spouse was there to get him down. Aren't you? Didn't they? Hey, kitty. Yes, they are. Very nice. Very nice kitties. This is my spouse's tank. There are still fry in there, as far as I understand it. That's her big catfish. Dang, he does not look good. Ew. They are breathing hard. That doesn't look very good. There's also some otosynchus in here to deal with the algae issues. We've got about 10 of them. There's some snails, too. Well, there's the female crib. What's she doing up there? I don't see any fry. But there's one of the snails. And these are my fish, of course. I did another video on the Yeti, but not to start one of these. So this is the Yeti. He's still staying pretty much white. He's a good looking beta, very active. He shares his tank with these little Rasboras. I think it's 2 males and 2 females, maybe. But they're doing pretty good. I've got a real banana plant in there. That's a real plant. And it's called a banana plant because, as you can see, at the bottom, those look like little bananas. And then I got a moss ball, a real moss ball. But My first fishy love is, of course, these guys. And there's some fine looking beasts. I think the laser light is probably still too dim or something to get them to oh, look. Did he see it? Did they see it? They see it. They say, we want this. This is our next meal. Are you gonna? Yeah. He wants it. Guess who else wants it? Did you want this, Mia? Mia? She's looking at the dang source of it. She's too smart for her own good. Go get it, Mia. Oh, it went under the oven. So yeah, I mean, sometimes I can get all of them to chase it at once, you know. This one, he's trying to eat it. My purple one. They all getting interested in it. Hey, hang on. Hang on. They'll see it better. Alright, they'll be able to see it better in the dark. There he is. Can you see them? They want it. Do you want this fish? When they're biting, it's because they want to eat this. You see them coming for it. They bite at the gravel and pick up some gravel and then spit it out because they're supposed to be like sifting fish. They sift through the sand. They can spit sand out through their gills and through their mouth when they're sifting for food. But you can see they're interested in this. Especially my pink fish, my dragon blood. They're biting for it. You hungry for this fish? They want some laser. Well, I just think it's worth showing you how fish are interactive and intelligent, and they can chase a laser light just like a cat. Maybe not exactly just like, but I mean, they see it as prey just like a cat. So I was really tickled when I first saw my fish chasing a laser light. But that's enough of that. Though I know it's never really enough when you're watching fish chase a laser light. Right, Jasper? Right, Tuna? It's a beautiful cat. Okay. Right, Mia? Alright. I think that's been enough of that. It's 8 minutes in. This is the part where you all turn off the video because I'm done showing my animals. Or maybe not. So, the lecture I'm going to do right now is on models of disability. Because, I mean, model, it just basically means a particular way of understanding disability. What is it? And first of all, I should say that when I'm talking about disability, I mean physical, emotional, social, and cognitive impairment, not simply physical impairment. Autism and Down syndrome, of course, they're disabilities just as legitimate as being blind or deaf or having lost the use of your legs. But I think it's also important to note that mental health disabilities like bipolar disorder or social anxiety disorder are also disabilities just as real and legitimate as other mental and as physical disabilities, because they're disabling. And in fact, what I'm writing my dissertation on is the relationship between, I guess you could say, mental health disabilities and Christian theology from a liberationist perspective. So, as I found in my research, like researching for my dissertation, 5 models of understanding disability have been widely adopted in theological thinking about disability. 1, the moral or religious model. 2, the rehabilitative or economic model. 3, the medical model. 4, the minority or social model. And 5, Deborah Beth Creamer's novel Limits model. So there are 4 models after those 5 that are less widely prevalent. The identity model, the human rights model, the cultural model, and the charity model. So we're going to get to each of these over the course of this talk. Prior to the advent of disability liberation theology, Christian theologians tended to adopt apolitical models of disability, models that weren't that interested in like disability rights, disability political movements. And the apolitical models that they tended to adopt were the moral, medical, or rehabilitative, also known as economic models. The moral model is the oldest model for understanding disability in the Christian tradition. The moral model includes the belief that disability is a punishment from God for sin, hence linking up inextricably disability and sinfulness. The moral model includes the belief that disability is a punishment from God for sins committed by not only by oneself but by your ancestors, possibly. Your ancestors did something bad and now you're being punished with this affliction, and that marginalizes your entire family as sinful. Moral model includes the belief that disability is a test of faith, and where a lack of healing represents a failing of the test. So the notion is that faith should heal your affliction, and if it doesn't, you don't have sufficient faith. The moral model finally includes the belief that disability is a blessing given to people with disabilities for the sake of their character development. And this last manifestation of the moral model is all fine and well only if somebody with disabilities uses it to think about their own situation. But I don't think it's ever justified for somebody on the outside to say, well, this is for your character development, because maybe the person with disabilities doesn't feel that way. I think it's always the smartest thing to stick to the principle of never trying to make sense of somebody else's suffering. Like, let them have that space for themselves. Because like Emmanuel Levinas said, the justification of the other's suffering is the source of all immorality, because it causes you to overlook their legitimate pain and struggles. The moral model has contributed to devastating marginalization of people with disabilities who have been declared sinful or faithless, and they become shunned in their communities. The moral model was the uncontested model for understanding disability until the 19th and 20th centuries, which was when rehabilitative and medical models came to prominence on account of the ascendancy of modern medicine and psychology. as well as industrial capitalism. So let's unpack what these models are, rehabilitative and medical, in turn. In the rehabilitative or economic model of disability, disability is seen as a lack of financial independence and productivity that has to be overcome with the help of others. Non-disabled people work with disabled people to help them find jobs, retain jobs, and become as financially independent as possible. This is an incredibly important service for people with disabilities who do want to live independently and be mainstreamed. Yet, this model is open to critique. The pioneering disability theologian Nancy Eiesland has asserted that the rehabilitative model problematically defines disability in economic terms. That is, disability as being, quote, an inability to work in one's former employment or a health-related limitation on the amount or kind of work a person could perform, unquote. So on this model, a disabled person is above all somebody who must be retrained to be productive in a capitalist society. The problem is located not in questionable social structures and values, but in the disabled person themselves, who is unable to perform to the system's satisfaction. Disability, as well as age, notably, is something devalued as unproductive in a capitalist system. Marno Retief and Rantoa Letsosa note that, quote, such an economic focus may contribute to the dehumanization of the person with the disability as someone who is somehow missing parts, unquote. The rehabilitative or economic model may work well for those who want to be independent and can become so. And I'm noticing the glare on my tank. I apologize for that, but you can still see them pretty well. But the rehabilitative economic model works well for those who can, but what about those who can't? This model, it can be heartbreaking for disabled people who locate their worth in their ability to produce in society and are unable to do it. So when they're unable to have a productive job, they feel like worthless, which is a problematic implication of this model. The rehabilitative or economic model is closely related to the medical model of disability. But instead of defining disability as an economic problem to be solved, the medical model defines disability as a medical problem to be solved, a pathology or an abnormality to be cured, supposedly cured. The cure is supposed to occur when people with disabilities commit themselves to working with trained professionals for the sake of the adjustment of the person with the disability to the condition of the environment. The purpose of such adjustment is to gain. They are fighting in there, I tell you. But the purpose of adjusting a person, particularly a person with like mental health disabilities, to external conditions is for them to gain the ability to more faithfully approximate the standards of normality, rather than questioning whether there are legitimate external factors contributing to one's distress. Therapeutic adjustment prompts the individual to see all problems as internal and in need of adjustment to suit external conditions. This model is certainly open to critique, and it's one of the most critiqued models in the present day, probably because it's also one of the most widespread. So whenever you hear terms like mental illness, mental health problems, those are all based on the medical model, thinking of like mental difference as something that needs to be cured and eradicated because it's an illness. But yeah, this model is definitely open to critique. External problems that cause distress, such as ethical mistreatment of people with disabilities by others, cannot be resolved by any internal cure. Just think about how the forces like racism and sexism and ableism and homophobia can wear so hard on somebody and make their mental health so much worse. There's no way that people can sufficiently adjust their internal circumstances to make those external problems go away. So the medical model, it can be difficult for disabled people to navigate. On this model, a disabled person has some form of deficit that requires remediation, and until then, they're socially deviant. Their lives in some quarters are even regarded as a personal tragedy. In regarding disability as a tragedy, as an illness, as a sickness, as something that needs to be eradicated, particularly in the case of like intellectual, emotional, social disabilities. Disability is defined in a fundamentally negative way. It is seen as objectively bad and pitiable, something to be prevented if possible, and if it happens, to be cured if possible. The medical model, with its emphasis on prevention and cure, ideologically supports eugenicist efforts to prevent disability by preventing the birth of disabled people. And eugenicism, it's basically an effort to weed out the human race so that only the supposedly well-born continue on, and like the so-called weaker or inadequate are sifted out, thrown into the fire like chaff. So in seeing intellectual, social, and emotional disabilities as a sickness or illness that needs to be cured, that also it propels into relevance the idea that people with these issues should be prevented altogether if possible, because sickness and illness are always bad things, so these people shouldn't even be brought into the world, which is really, is extremely ableist and not cool. But there is a lot of thought, especially the whole issue of abortion. A lot of disabled people have a personal struggle with what they think about abortion, because so often disabled fetuses are the ones that are chosen to be aborted. So it's really that can be a tough subject. But that's a digression. To get back on track, both of the rehabilitative and the medical models locate the problem of disability in the impairments of the disabled people, and they neglect the reality of social discrimination that itself can cause tremendous distress. Both models They fail to identify political change through legislative amelioration of social barriers as an area in which the problem, those are my air quotes, the problem of disability can be addressed. Yet, the rehabilitative, medical, and moral models were the preeminent models for understanding disability in Christian theology until Nancy Eiesland, in her book The Disabled God, introduced the minority, aka the social model, to the field of disability theology in 1994. So Eiesland's minority model was a political model championed by the disability rights movement, and it was an innovative... Oh, they were wrestling. You missed it. They were wrestling. They like to play. You like to play? Oh! Mean. They do that all the time. But gosh, I need to get back to this for you all. So, Eiesland's minority model or social model, it was interested in like political rights for people with disabilities. It was an innovative alternative to apolitical, medical, moral, and economic models. The social model, as Eiesland defines it,